Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Rob Malero.
And we are the
FAIRtax Guys.
Still fighting for truth, justice, and the American way.
And the fair tax.
Yes, and we can be pleased to say that Kat Cammack, the congressional candidate who said to our face that the income tax is un-American, she won.
Yep.
So,
several candidates, new people running for Congress who were also fair tax. They signed the fair tax pledge.
Mm-hmm.
They won their seat. You know, it's generally a winning issue, especially for newbies. Okay.
Yes.
Yep. So that's good.
So we're glad to see Ms. Cammack win, and hopefully everybody else who won and signed the fair tax pledge will follow through on it.
Yep.
And hopefully that they could be as good as Congressman Yoho was about talking it up, actually talking it up and giving the prebate cards out to people and really trying to convince his colleagues that the fair tax is a good idea.
Yeah, one of the first times my wife and I went to a town hall by Congressman Yoho, and of course he saw us with our fair tax gear sitting in the audience. You know, I put my hand up, and he said, he told everybody, you've got to learn about the fair tax, and he pulled these, we call them prebate cards, out of his shirt pocket. I was so happy to see that in Congress, in Washington, D.C., he keeps these in his shirt pocket.
Now, why is it that this is such a good idea and so important?
Well, I think we have to defund the IRS. And why? Because
taxpayers matter.
Taxpayers matter.
Okay.
All right.
We have got a full show for you here on FAIRtax Power Radio today, so let's just go ahead and dig in. As we mentioned last week, we're now going to, instead of doing a big Congress.gov every other show, we're going to do a little bit every time.
Yeah.
So there are still some really goodies left over on Congress.gov that we didn't get to talk about on the last episode, and I want to dive right in with H.R. 8669, a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to impose, get this, a tax on employers whose employees receive certain federal benefits.
What?
All right, I will repeat that for you.
I mean, that doesn't...
Somebody, it's a representative from California, Ro Khanna, if I'm reading that properly, wants to impose a tax on employers if their employees receive certain federal benefits. Now, again, there's no text with this, so I'm not sure exactly what she's up to. But how much sense does that make?
It doesn't. I mean,
you know what that is? That will incentivize employers not to hire people who are getting these federal benefits.
That's right. Yep.
Sometimes the people who need the jobs the most will be incentivized to be not hired.
And it just doesn't make sense on the surface. So an employee gets some kind of a federal benefit. That's no business of the employer. How is the employer even supposed to know? All right. How is the IRS supposed to know about that? They shouldn't.
Sounds like they're trying to shift the burden of funding those benefits from the general population to the employers for whom these people work.
It's just nuts.
It is nuts.
But this is the type of thing, all right, generally throughout the past 2 years of the 116th Congress, almost 2 years, all right, they have been averaging about 9 proposals every day they're in session to change the tax code. 9 proposals. Fortunately, only a few of these will become law, but it shows you where their mindset is. They want to do everything through the tax code. It's just nuts.
Okay, and the next two actually come from the same representative, Michael Cloud of Texas, H.R. 8657 and 8656. Both of them obviously filed at the same time. 8656 says to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to provide emergency savings accounts for small businesses, and then 8657 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide emergency savings accounts for individuals. Now, why does it take two separate bills to do that?
Because he's trying to separate business and individuals, but
I guess businesses get one provision and independents get.
But what is an emergency savings account?
Why does the tax code have to worry about savings accounts? Just go down to your credit union or your bank and open one.
Yeah. And under the fair tax, any interest you earn in your savings account will not be taxed, okay? Savings and investments will not be taxed under the fair tax.
Yeah.
So we're going to get more savings and investments.
I don't have text on either of these bills right, but I am guessing that these emergency savings accounts come with some federal money in them.
That's very possible.
That could very well be what they're up to.
Some of that refundable tax credit stuff.
Oh yeah, we got this one, and here's one for HR 8654. This comes from Oregon, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to modify the energy tax credit to apply to qualified distributed wind energy property.
They want to enhance electricity made by wind. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but how many times have we seen? We saw we were working this several weeks ago that they wanted to rescind a tax credit. They'll give it to you and then they'll take it away, and then they'll give it back to you and then they'll take it away. Last week we were talking about uncertainty versus certainty.
Yeah.
More uncertainty in the tax code.
Yeah.
Picking winners and losers. Wind energy property gets it. Geothermal doesn't, I guess.
And I, as a former science teacher, I have to wonder, do wind turbines, windmills, do they create more energy than they use? Because it takes energy to build those things. They're very tall, they're very large, they have a lot of parts, and it takes a lot of energy to make those things. Do they create more energy than it requires to build them? And I don't know the answer to that.
What's funny, though, that the wind turbine people, a lot of those are saying that that's a good idea because it's a move away from fossil fuel.
Yeah.
Guess what it takes to lubricate those things?
Yeah. And I guess what it takes to build them.
Don't think for a minute there's not a lot of petroleum-based product in those wind turbines trying to. And I saw a picture the other day of a bunch of wind turbine blades that had been tossed in a landfill.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what they're all about.
And they're huge, too.
But
they're huge.
But now
the blades are not biodegradable.
Uh-huh.
So it just becomes terrible waste problem.
Yep. But HR 8654 wants to amend the Internal Revenue Code to modify. It doesn't say whether it wants to increase it or decrease it. It just says modify the energy tax credit to apply to qualified distributed wind energy property. It sounds like it wants to extend that tax credit, that the distributed wind energy properties currently don't get it and they want to try to give it. But again, there's no text to go by, so we can just kind of go by what the short description in the title says.
Yeah. But again, as a former science teacher, I think we should develop every source of energy we can, especially the renewable ones, wind and solar and so forth. We're going to talk more about that in a little while, but there's a cost to everything, and we have to pay attention to that. No power generation is free.
Absolutely. It's funny, you see some of these electric vehicle rechargers that are powered by diesel generators. I've seen that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, how crazy that. We're going to start featuring Congress.gov on a shortened segment on every FAIRtax Power Radio episode from here on. We've got a lot to get into today, so let's move on to your Grassroots Corner.
Grassroots Corner.
This is about another friend of ours.
Yep. Grassroots Corner this week. Jim Bennett is the Grassroots Director for AFFT, the Americans for Fair Taxation. And if you have any questions of Jim, or you want to give him some information about another great volunteer, contact him at jim.bennett@fairtax.org. Bennett has 2 N's and 2 T's, okay? This one is Meet Bob Scarborough. I've heard that name before.
Yeah, I think we did that last July.
Yeah. So Bob Scarborough, if you've been listening to FAIRtax Power Radio, he's our contact person up in Winston-Salem on WTOB, which is the radio station that Bob grew up listening to. And Bob Scarborough, actually, turns out he was a classmate of our Bob's younger brother. And he's the one that got FAIRtax Power Radio on our first terrestrial radio station, WTOB in Winston-Salem, and he's also responsible for getting FAIRtax Power Radio on 2 other stations, WAME
in Statesville,
North Carolina, and
WLSC in Loris, South Carolina.
Yeah.
And he says there are a couple other stations, in his words, that are about ready to pop up.
That sounds great to me.
He's presenting FAIRtax Power Radio to a pretty large. I'm stepping on your report there.
That's okay.
What that's all about.
In the report, which if you go to fairtax.org and sign up there with your contact information, you will get this weekly report, the Grassroots Corner, and you'll also get Steve Hayes' chairman's report, and you'll get a quick email about FAIRtax Power Radio. It goes into Bob's background and so forth, Bob Scarborough, and there's more information there. And it's great because he's been a huge benefit to us.
Mm-hmm.
He believes in the FAIRtax, and he's working hard to get us out over more terrestrial radio stations and expand our reach. It's wonderful.
Yeah, we'll have to go back up there next July if we can.
Yeah, that'll be good. Yep.
All right.
All right. Now,
something we wanted to do here on FAIRtax Power Radio, we have mentioned several times that the founders of the country envision the states as laboratories for trying ideas out and see what works and see what doesn't work. And we've talked about the FAIRtax state-level FAIRtax initiatives going on in 3 states.
Mm-hmm.
So we figured we'd just kind of follow up with those folks and see what's going on there.
Except first, there's an unfair tax.
Oh, yes.
That was defeated in Illinois. Now,
yes.
if you haven't heard about this, Governor Pritzker of Illinois was pushing for, first off, Illinois, we reported on this on a previous FAIRtax Power Radio. Illinois at one point had a sales tax only. Then they decided to add a flat income tax. And Governor Pritzker wants to make it a graduated income tax, and he started calling it the FAIRtax. AFFT got up in arms about that because FAIRtax is a registered trademark of the Americans for Fair Taxation. Unfortunately, the AFFT doesn't have the funds necessary to bring the governor of Illinois to court to cease and desist. So he continually, for the last year, was talking about this quote-unquote fair tax, which is not, if it's a graduated income tax, it ain't fair, okay? Well, guess what? It was defeated by the people. The good people of Illinois saw through this nonsense, and they said, no, we don't want a graduated income tax. We've seen what that does in other states. It messes with us, and we lose people, so that went down in flames.
But again, I think it's significant that people who want to change the federal graduated income tax, a flat tax will fix that.
Yeah.
And there was this huge movement in Illinois, well, a flat tax is unfair. We have to be fair and go to the graduated system.
Yeah.
So that tells you if you're taxing income, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No matter how you do it, you're doing it wrong. So, but we have several other states, okay? Which one do you want to do first?
Let's do Alabama. That's where my brother and mom live, and that seems to be the one that's making a good deal of progress. The ringleader of that movement is a gentleman named Chuck Bailey. So we wrote him and asked him for, what's an update? What's going on here? Their bill is called the Alabama Economic Freedom Act, and it was supposed to have been pre-filed and acted on in this legislative session. But the latest update that Chuck says, I'm going to read as much of this as I can. Currently, we're looking for a new sponsor. Although he remains in the Alabama House, Representative Mike Holmes, who was the original sponsor, had to bow out due to family responsibilities. We're very disappointed he can't continue, but he'll help as much as he can. And Chuck says we're on the hunt for a new sponsor and are negotiating with a couple of representatives to pick up the baton. Now, Mike, the outgoing representative, or the one who can no longer back this, was saying that he passed on the fiscal year 2020 actuals. I guess that's just some facts and figures and budget information for budget and revenue for use in preparing a bill to be reintroduced next February. So over the next couple of months in Alabama, our efforts include signing up a new sponsor, resetting the bill with our legislative and voting supporters, getting it pre-filed to allow assignment to committee for debate, and to vote it out to the full House early next session. So everything that they thought they were going to accomplish this year, they are going to try it again next year.
It's understandable because of the pandemic. That just put everything on hold.
That just put the kibosh on everything. And of course, he didn't really say much about Representative Holmes' family responsibilities that he had to bow out of the effort for.
Yeah, well, family comes first.
We respect the privacy there. Yeah. But Alabama is still on track to get a state-level fair tax. And again, they're talking about replacing their state income tax with a consumption tax modeled on the fair tax. And,
including a prebate.
Yep. So, Chuck, thanks for the update. If anything else happens, let us know. We'll pass it along to the audience here.
Yep. Okay.
Now, we did get another report of something going on in Nebraska. Was one of the other states. Yeah. And the gentleman, Rob, that was out there says, we really don't have anything to say at this time. I'll talk to you after the first of the year. So we'll...
it's basically an idea in Nebraska.
It's not as far along in Nebraska as it is in Alabama and Georgia.
Yeah, it just occurred to me. I have 2 nephews and a niece that live in Omaha. I should have asked them if they know anything about this. I didn't think of it till just now. Oh, well.
All right. And as I mentioned, Georgia was the other state that is considering the getting rid of their state income tax in favor of a fair tax. And a gentleman that's working on that is a guy named Philip Henson. And he sent... He must know Jade Wally.
Yes,
we asked him for a brief update. We get a long list that's way too long. And right at the bottom, he says, "I know I've written way too much for y'all to use on the air. Just kind of condense it in what it is." So I'm going to skip down to where he says the bottom line. The bottom line, actually in the paragraphs preceding it, he was talking about some of the things that how the fair tax, the state level fair tax, would affect what they call LOSTs, local option sales taxes. And there were some issues there that really hadn't been thought through and hadn't been addressed in their entirety.
And the interesting thing about that is Alabama has already done that. They got that all worked out with their local sales tax and the state sales tax, and they got it all put together in one nice package.
Well, the bottom line was that if this state fair tax bill went through, it would result in a windfall to the county and local units. And how the county and local units are going to spend that windfall was one of how do we deal with giving them too much money?
That's a problem.
So again, the details are way out there in the weeds, but we'll skip down here where it says the bottom line is that the bill that was written several years ago has to be rewritten to address some of those other concerns that they really haven't done in the original bill. He's established a budget of $15,000 to get that done. There's some there in there for promotion. It'll have to be supplemented with a separate promotional budget. And actually, here's what it said. After a 1-year transition, we would have a tax system at both the state and county levels that would conform to the principles of the fair tax as closely as possible. A low-rate, broad-based revenue, neutral, progressive consumption tax. Confident it would be a huge boost to the state's economy and that it would be a home run both economically and politically. This was his little PS at the bottom, was something I really was liking to see. It says, "We have an excellent sponsor committed in the Georgia House of Representatives, and like at the national level, they're looking for a sponsor in the Senate. They don't have one in the state Senate." But Phil says, "I would prefer a Democrat in the Senate since the House sponsor is a Republican, but that may not be feasible." Wouldn't that be cool?
That would be great.
If you've got bipartisan support, a Republican sponsoring it in the House, a Democrat sponsoring it in the Senate. Because as we have said over and over and over and over again, the fair tax benefits everybody. It doesn't matter what your political philosophy is. It doesn't matter what your affiliation is. There is nobody out there that would not like getting a bigger paycheck because withholding goes away. The payroll taxes go away. You get to keep everything you earn. I don't think there's anybody out there that would mourn the fact that, I can no longer have to keep all these records and fill out my income tax return. I enjoy sharing all my personal financial information with the government, and the fair tax takes that away. So I don't think there are too many people like that, regardless of whether they're D's or R's. That's a good idea. I hope that happens, Phil. I'd like to see a Democrat in one house and a Republican in the other, and then they could get it through.
Yeah. And one of the great benefits of the fair tax, whether it's at the state level or the national level, is it does away with the regressive nature of the payroll tax. All right, the payroll tax, as we've mentioned many times on Fair Tax Power Radio, is the most regressive tax in the federal income tax system that we have. It hurts the people who can least afford it. Okay, well, I happened to run across. I think it was the first time we made a podcast out of Steve Hayes' chairman's report. It was May 3rd of 2019, and I played that again, and it was interesting. I know I listened to it back, but that was like a year and a half ago. And he talked about the regressive nature of fuel taxes. And I never stopped to think about it, but yeah, the income tax is not the only thing that's regressive, all right? But fuel taxes, okay? Because the working poor, they still have to get to work. They still have to drive a vehicle to work, okay? And to drive their kids around, to go to the doctors and get groceries and all those other normal family things, okay? And they don't have a lot of extra money. All right, they're not going on long trips. They're just getting by, and yet the fuel tax, the federal fuel tax, really is an expense for them. Now, it does not show up on the receipt, does it?
No, it doesn't.
No, it's hidden in the price of the gasoline or the diesel.
Don't think for a minute when you fill up your car that there's not a number, there's state level, federal level, and in a lot of cases local level taxmen standing there at the pump with their hand out every time you fill out. But you don't get to see how much of your money they get because the taxes are included in the price. Now, that's the way the fair tax is going to work. The fair tax will be included in the retail price of the items you purchase, but on your receipt, you will see how much the store kept and how much fair tax you paid. The cost of government will be plain to see every time you buy something under the fair tax. That's another thing that just scares the snot out of the politicians now.
Oh, yeah.
They love hiding how much their taxation system costs you. And when it's out there in the open and people can see it, look out.
Wouldn't it be something if every time you filled up your car and you got the receipt, it was listed on there all the state, local, and federal taxes?
Yeah.
All right, including, and they could even put in the profit that the fuel company, the energy company, is making, because their profit is minuscule compared to the taxes.
But you can look that up online.
Yeah.
You know, how much the state gas tax is in every state around the nation, how much the federal tax is. If you really wanted to drill down, you can get into the local and county taxes as well. But I'll tell you what, the taxes on a gallon of fuel is now like 5 times what the overall price of a gallon of fuel was when I started driving.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I remember.
Of course, you're dating yourself.
I know. I remember when I was in college, I had this big 440 Plymouth. I mean, that just loved the taste of high octane. That thing was get maybe 10 miles a gallon downhill with a tailwind. I remember driving away from a gas station one time because I thought 40 cents a gallon for premium fuel was outrageous.
Well, I guess
there's a lot more. There's a lot more than that in tax when you add up all the federal, state, and local taxes on fuel than that.
Well, when I was in college, I was the guy pumping the gas, and I remember 20 cents a gallon gas that I was pumping. Okay, I could put the nozzle in there. Somebody would ask for $2 worth of gas. Mm-hmm. All right, I could put the nozzle in there, go around, wash their windshield, and get back before the $2 rang up. Okay, you can't do that anymore.
Man, you can't blink your eyes twice before it's $2 now.
And so the taxes, the fuel taxes by the federal government, all the taxes, but the fuel tax by the federal government is regressive because the people who can least afford it, it's a bigger part of their budget. They don't know it. It's not on the receipt. They don't see it, but it's there. And it's part of the expense of running their family vehicle, okay? And then you've got people, again, by the time this airs, we don't know if we're going to know who's president. All right. If Mr. Biden becomes president, then they're going to talk about the Green New Deal. Okay. Well, the Green New Deal wants to get rid of fossil fuels. By the way, I'd like to see you get an airplane in the air without using fossil fuels. So let me know how that's going to work. Okay. It's not going to work with windmills and solar panels. Okay.
Airplanes are supposed to be replaced by high-speed rail.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Now try taking that to Hawaii, though.
Yeah. That's going to be a trick. Okay.
Oh, well.
But
we're
anyways,
off base here.
One of the things they want to do, one of the ways of getting rid of fossil fuel is to raise federal taxes. Well, who's that going to affect more? The people at the bottom of the income scale. That would be a very regressive tax, okay? So all these federal taxes that are embedded in there and you can't see, but they're there, they're very regressive. Just like the payroll tax. So I'd like to make a proposal, and I did not clear this or even talk to anybody at AFFT. So they're probably not going to like this idea.
You'll have to disclaimer that is your idea on only. Okay.
It is strictly my idea.
Miss Producer is coming over here to see what she's up to.
I want to protect the people that most need the protection. I want to help the people that most need the help and get rid of all the regressive taxes, not just the income tax, but the fuel taxes too. So I am proposing we get rid of the federal fuel taxes on all energy costs and replace it by increasing the fair tax and the prebate, okay? Increasing the fair tax rate and the prebate so it makes up for what the federal government would lose in the energy taxes. That way, the people at the bottom of the income scale are absolutely protected. Okay. Now we'll wait to see what kind of response we get from our friends at the AFFT.
We'll see what Randy has to say to you about that. But again, I thank Phil Henson for the report on the state of the state fair tax in Georgia, and Chuck Bailey in Alabama, and hopefully we'll have something after the first of the year in Nebraska. But we did want to keep our audience here up to date on what's going on. You know, that the media is paying absolutely zero attention to these state level attempts to
hats off to these state level volunteers, because it's a lot of work to get something passed in your state legislature, and they're all volunteers. Everybody with the state and national organizations are volunteers. There's no paid positions for all the people working on the fair tax.
We've got to take over 2 minutes to wrap up here and encourage people to join AFFT, join the 1040 Club if you can. Commit $10.40 a month to getting rid of the Form 1040, which would be a wonderful idea.
You do that by going to fairtax.org/1040.
And talking about state level fair tax, most states, I'm guessing most states, or a lot of states, do have a state level fair tax organization like we have in Florida. And if you don't have one, we'll help you start one. If you'd like to know what yours is, fairtax.org lists them all.
Yeah. And if you want to get one of these nifty scrolling banners, okay.
I just got 2 new ones.
Yeah, good. Fairtaxstore.org. Fairtaxstore.org, okay. Go in there. They have a number of promotional items. They ship every Friday, so if you order it on Monday, there's going to be a little delay before it's shipped. But order some of these materials, like the campaign button that Bob is wearing, the pens and so forth, and show your support for the fair tax. Let everybody know you support the fair tax.
Share our videos when they stream on Facebook. Go to FAIRtaxGuys.com and look at the repository of all the old stuff. If you're listening on some of the podcasts or the radio stations, sometimes there's some visual stuff like the Rubik's Cubes here that you really like to go back and get a look at and see how that works.
Yep. And make sure you share our videos and podcasts. We're everywhere. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Parler, Gab, Instagram. We're on Rumble now. Podcasts are on Spreaker.com, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. And we have our own website, FAIRtaxGuys.com.
Radio stations,
WTOB in Winston-Salem on Sunday morning. That's our first terrestrial radio station. Another one in North Carolina in Statesville is WAME
and WLSC Laura, South Carolina. They all stream online. Check that out. And that's going to wrap up this edition of Fair Tax Power Radio. Again, thank you so much for watching and listening. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
The Fair Tax Guys reminding you again that the fair tax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
The FAIRtax is a tax replacement plan where we take all the federal income taxes, including corporate, personal, gift, and estate taxes, and replace them with one national consumption tax on new purchases above the poverty level only. This form of consumption tax comes with no exceptions and is progressive, not regressive. The poor are not paying more, and the rich are not paying less. What makes it progressive is that all Americans are untaxed up to the poverty level via the prebate, much like your standard tax deduction. The taxes are collected by retail businesses at state level, so the system is more accountable. The IRS is done away with, and you have control over your money and what the overall tax rate your household pays. The fair tax is revenue neutral, so the government receives the same amount of money as they do now, and it's fair because you decide what's fair, not them. To learn more, visit fairtax.org and be sure to like us on social media to help educate your friends and spread the word.